Hey guys, Chic here, and today I'm going to answer my Q&A questions. So recently I actually had a Q&A back in November, but I actually did one back in September as well. And today I'm going to be answering both batches of questions. And the people who commented on the September Q&A asked first, so it's really only fair that I answered them first. Gear up, because this is probably going to be a long one if I had to guess. Game Music TV says, congratulations on 1K, thank you very much. Obviously this is a little bit outdated, but yeah. 1. In your opinion, which racing game has the best soundtrack? I don't know if I can pick one exact favorite, but a few of my favorites absolutely have to be Forza Horizon 1, Forza Horizon 3, Burnout Paradise, Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, and Need for Speed Pro Street. And 2 absolutely special mentions that are a little bit different, but I have to say here, are Forza Motorsport 4 and Gran Turismo Sport. 2nd, what is your favorite band? Well, I've got actually 2 favorite bands, I'd say. 1 being Churches, 2 being Pendulum. I know they're very, very different kinds of music, but I actually found Churches through Forza Horizon 3 back then, and massively got into their music. Since then, I own all their albums on vinyl, and I actually went to see them back in April of 2019. Pendulum is easily my 2nd favorite band. Again, very different music, but I discovered them through Need for Speed Hot Pursuit with Watercolor, and now I've listened to all their albums, and I actually own Hold Your Color on vinyl. 3. Which location would you like to see for the next Forza Horizon, and why? My dream location is going to be an odd one to most people, and that's going to be in Texas. Why Texas? It's really because of my bias. I live in Texas. And I've heard from various friends and various people that when they play a Forza Horizon game that is actually from a place that they live in, you notice all these little things that are just like where you live, and it's a freaky feeling, and I really wanted to experience that. But Texas is just kind of a weird state, you know. It's not very Hollywood. It's not very popular. Hollywood places are like California, New York, a couple European countries. Texas, not really, except if you're just looking for Western movies and stuff. But believe it or not, Texas actually does have car culture. My car culture, I mean 1320 video. But I really want to experience that feeling of having a game in your hometown. So if Forza Horizon was in Texas, I would scream. But I think in general for the next Horizon, I would actually like a place that's a little bit more city-based. I think Horizon has been leaning too much towards country, and of course that's some fun stuff, and of course that's how the Eliminator is possible and stuff like that. But I would just like a bit more city in the next game. Next question is from Gundamu Tanjiro, aka that I know as Daniel Sarang, and he says, mad congrats on hitting 1.1k subs. Getting a little bit outdated, but thank you very much. 1 best meme song of 2020. Oh yeah, we did it! That is a very obvious bait question. And 2, do you think Dirt 5 has the potential to be the best Dirt game since 2 or 3? Well, obviously you asked this far before I actually had the game, and back then I probably would have said, I'm not exactly sure. It would have been something that's very up in the air for me. I wouldn't really be able to tell, but now that I have it in my hands, no, it's not. The game is plagued with technical issues, as we all know, with terrible performance, physics issues, online issues, no wheel support, all that kind of stuff. But even when that stuff does get fixed, I don't think it'll surpass Dirt 2 or 3 for me. I just don't like the handling as much. And of course that doesn't mean the handling is bad. It just means I prefer the style in 2 and 3. I like that there's mechanical damage. I actually like the car selection in the older games more, but for those reasons combined, no, I don't think Dirt 5 is superior to Dirt 2 or 3 for me personally. Next is NFS Beast. And I have to say real quick, NFS Beast, you've been subbed to me for ages. I think since like 2013, and you're still watching. Thanks for being a dedicated viewer. He says, I love your vids. I'm glad to be a subscriber to your channel. Well, thank you very much. And he asks for the questions in the Q&A, what is the worst Need for Speed game in your opinion? Until 2017, I would have told you Need for Speed Rivals, because when Rivals came out, I was really thinking that it was going to be one of the best Need for Speed games out there. It was going to be amazing. It was going to be a combination of Hot Pursuit 2010 and Most Wanted 2012, which I both liked. And it was going to have better graphics, some car customization, new cars, all that stuff. Rivals is not that great in my opinion. The progression's okay, but the Rivals is just way too buggy of a game. And it even goes beyond the bugs. The game is just far too chaotic, and I don't really feel like the races are really going on. When you start a race, there's just such little emphasis that you actually started the race. I don't really remember any of the racing in that game. All I remember from Rivals is just chaos. So Rivals, while it looks good, there's just not that much memorable about the gameplay in my opinion, even though the handling is better than the current titles. But as of late, I would absolutely say Need for Speed Payback actually takes that crown. Payback has poor handling, poor graphics, poor direction, poor story, and the only really thing that it's not poor at is customization. They managed to screw up nearly everything that they kind of got right with Need for Speed 2015. In my opinion, all that Need for Speed 2015 needed was just better handling, and you could have called the game great. But they just decided to go 1,000 steps back with Payback. And then with Heat, it's like they tried to make things better after they screw them all up with Payback, and I don't think either Payback or Heat got to the level of Need for Speed 2015. In fact, I think I see people trying to mod Heat and stuff, and I really think 2015 is a better potential base. But Payback is really the one that screwed Ghost over entirely, so I'm gonna say Payback. If you could own one car from any racing game, what would it be? Honestly, that's quite a hard one. It really depends on if it's a road car or if it's a race car. That also makes me think, would I pick one based on rarity, so like how little chance I could actually have it in real life, or how much I would actually want the car? But if I could own one car from any racing game, it would probably be the McLaren F1 LM. The F1, in my opinion, is one of the best, if not the best supercar of all time, and the F1 LM just looks even more amazing in my opinion with the race package. And even if that thing is not street legal, is it street legal? Turns out there actually is an F1 LM spec with street legal modifications. So an F1 LM that was street legal is absolutely the car that I would take from a racing game to own in real life. And in all the racing games that you have played, who is your favorite character? That's a hard one because I legitimately can't think of much. Therefore, I'm unfortunately not really able to give an answer on that. Next up is Alan Tang, and first question he says is, are you going to play more racing games like Need for Speed World on your channel? So I think Alan Tang does have an interest in Need for Speed World as he posts videos about Need for Speed World in my Discord server and stuff like that. Actually, I used to play a bit of it on Soapbox Race World, but the servers were just so spotty that it was hard to play with my friends. And I think what they're doing with Soapbox Race World as of recently with all the updates and stuff has been actually really, really awesome. But there's not much that really gets me into the game personally. For me, one of the downsides of the game is just the control method. It's hard to use with a controller because the UI is obviously made with mouse and keyboard, and of course it handles well with mouse and keyboard. I just don't prefer to play racing games with a mouse and keyboard. Give me a controller or a wheel all day. But in terms of car selection, customization, and map, Need for Speed World as of late is really awesome. What's the future of your career as a YouTuber? I don't really look at this as a career, actually. I've always looked at YouTube as more of a hobby. I don't look to make any money off of it. I don't look to make it as a career. So I think at least as of now, I'm just going to keep going in the path that I have because it's been going really well. Are you going to do more collabs with other YouTubers like your friends Jazz and Core? So this was asked before the final boss of racing games came out, and I would have said yes. And now I would have still said yes. Josh and I, aka Jazz, have had a few more video ideas together that should be quite interesting. And Core and I have also had a couple video ideas, but nothing's really come to fruition out of that. But I absolutely want to do more collabs because I actually want to introduce more and more people to my friends' channels, because now I've blown up to some giant level. I want to show more of my subscribers more YouTubers that they might like. I think both the guys you mentioned are really good to collab with. Obviously, they're really, really good friends of mine that I have known for years, but they also have something different to bring to the table. Josh has his crazy, funny, fast editing, and Core has his uniqueness of having this car enthusiast perspective with racing games and focusing on a lot of niche racing games and stuff like that too. 4. What's your dream car, and are you planning to do any mods or keeping it stock? That was several questions in one. What is my dream car? Well, you have to look at it in a few different ways. What is your dream car that is easily available? What is your dream car that could be actually possible in your life? And 3, what is your unrealistic dream car? I'm actually going to start at the top and go down. So unrealistic dream car is actually what I answered earlier, being a McLaren F1 LM that would be road legal. 2 is the car in my profile pic that would be probably an attainable dream car. I just hope it doesn't go up in value. I think my dream car on the lowest end would have to be a Nissan 350Z. I've always wanted a 350Z ever since I was a kid and loved to play off it in Need for Speed Underground and Underground 2. And I just love the sound of the car. I love the way the car looks. It in orange is amazing. It was always one of my favorite childhood cars, and I still want to own one today. In fact, I've actually been looking at them on the used market. And for mods or keeping it stock, that really all depends on the car itself. For something like a daily driver, I don't think I would do all that much. I would probably do some like slight modifications. And then for a project car, I would want to do something a bit different, but I don't really know as of yet because I'm not really in a life situation where I have a car or multiple cars. And 5, how long does it take to make videos, recording gameplay, processing, etc.? That's an interesting one. Like, it really depends on the video. I have some shorter videos that I can make pretty easily. And in fact, there's actually been some longer ones that I've done really, really fast. So my arcade racing versus sim racing, or was it sim racing versus arcade racing? I don't know, I think it was the second one. That video was made in the entirety of one day. I got the idea to do it, I recorded it, and then I did all the editing. I did a little skit where my mom actually dropped the games on the ground. I picked them up, then dropped 4-7 on the ground. That skit, that recording, the gameplay, the upload, and getting it on YouTube was all done within one day. And that actually surprised me a bit because some videos take a lot longer. For example, the final boss of racing games with Jazz took me 3 months. Now, if I worked on it every day, I worked on it more often, I could probably get it done within 1 month. But the thing is with this is that what happened is that I kept editing it and I just kept getting stuck on different parts. What do I do here? And actually, there's plenty of parts that were in that video that took me some time of like how do I nail this here? There's an edit here, but I'm not completely done with it. Basically, there's a lot of little things I got stuck on, and sometimes I didn't know where to take the footage later. And this is the first time I'll be saying this. I actually cut out an entire race from that video because the last race was actually a drift race. But it was very short and I didn't know what to do with the footage. And that last race got me stuck on it for a while. So it really depends on the video. And for the last of the September questions, Last Demo asks, 1, what are your thoughts on the Test Drive series? So I've only played Test Drive Unlimited. I haven't played any of the standard Test Drive games, but I remember playing a bit of TDU1 back when I was like 6 years old, but I don't remember too much of it. And then I've played a bit of TDU2 on my Xbox 360. TDU2 I enjoyed for its big map, its car list, the whole dealer system, you could have houses. I like a lot of aspects about TDU2, but the actual career and driving itself leave a bit to be desired in my opinion. 2, what games or their concepts would you like to see make a comeback? That's an interesting one. 2 things that I think could definitely make a comeback is 1, cartoony racing games or cel-shaded racing games like Automodelista. I'd like to see really more unique stuff like that. The closest thing really to something unique with the art style and stuff like that is Hot Shot Racing, which I love Hot Shot Racing by the way, but I think it'd be cool if we got more stuff that looked more like a cartoon rather than an old like 90s video game. Where do you see the future of racing games heading in both arcade and simulation type games? This is an interesting one. For arcade racing games, since there's a lot of different concepts at play, there's action, there's more realistic arcade racing games like Forza Horizon. Obviously it's not realistic, but it's more realistic than something, say, Split Second, like a crazy action game. So it's really hard to tell the future of arcade racing games, but I think with arcade racing games, what's been becoming more popular as of late is actually indie racing games. Stuff like Hot Shot Racing and Inertial Drift have gained a lot of attention this year, and I think also part of that is due to the big AAA publisher games for arcade racing games being very disappointing recently with how bad The Crew 2 is, how bad Grid 2019 was, and how bad Need for Speed has been with its past 2 games. So I think indie is just going to get more and more attention in the arcade racing game space if AAA publishers don't really step their game up. And for Sims, this is quite an interesting one, but really the only thing I can say is that I would like them to innovate a little more and improve simulations in other areas than the core physics. A lot of the sim racing community just asks for physics and physics improvements, and obviously those things are great. Smoother and better driving feel is obviously the most important thing in a simulator, but I want other things to be improved as well. I want sims with better graphics. Plenty of the most beloved sims feel like they just look kind of old, like Richard Burns' Rally. To many, that's considered the best rally simulator, but when I play the game, it just feels so old. Dirt Rally 2.0 to some people might have worse physics, but I'm much more immersed in it because of the much better graphics. I think simulators need to keep their good physics, but also start to improve their graphics more. And as well as this for Sims, I think they need to try to offer a bit of a more polished experience. The worst example I can give in this case is Vanilla Assetto Corsa. And then what sort of innovations would you like to see in newer games? Well, the problem with innovation is that innovation is usually creating something new that you didn't know you wanted previously, so I can't really predict innovation. But I think in some ways I just want games to be as good as they used to be, at least in the arcade racing game space. I want great multiplayer modes back, I want everything to be there on launch, but these aren't innovations. These are just things that we should expect. So I don't really know what to answer in terms of innovation. And that is it for the September questions. Now on to the meat of the video, the November questions. So the first of the November questions, Antonio Miller asks, have you played Dirt 5? Yes, I indeed have played Dirt 5. I don't really know what to think of the game all that much. I'm a bit mixed on it. But yes, I have played Dirt 5. What is your favorite fictional car? I really like this one. Two of my favorites specifically have to be the Custom Coupe / Katana Hydros Techno or Custom, and then the Jansen P88 Special Toy Edition. These were easily my two favorite cars in Burnout Paradise, even if they weren't the fastest. Obviously, we all like the Custom Coupe / Hydros Techno. Obviously, it's supposed to be like a RSX mixed in with a Civic with the cool green and blue design. That's become, I think easily Burnout's most iconic car. And then one that's a bit more overlooked, not as talked about as much, is the P88 Special Toy car. I loved this car. This was my main car back on the Xbox 360 version of Burnout Paradise, and I just went and immediately grinded Big Surf on my Switch to get it on the Switch version of the game. It's such a favorite for me. It's the coolness of a DeLorean, plus it hovers and stuff, and it's a toy, and you can switch between modes. It has the flame spitting out the back when you do the boost. It's just awesome. But I think those two, at least for right now, at least I can think of these right now, are easily my favorite fictional cars. Of all the racing games, what is your favorite soundtrack and why? So I kind of answered this earlier. Again, favorites just have to be Horizon 1, Horizon 3, Burnout Paradise, Most Wanted 2012, and Pro Street. Forza 4, and then Gran Turismo Sport as well. What would be your perfect racing game? If you're the developer of that game, what would you make? Explain your opinion about it and compare and take some examples from other racing games. I guess he means when you're making the game, that is. So that's quite an interesting one. Something I think perfect for me personally is actually something that might just exist soon. Gran Turismo 7. I loved GT Sport, and if I was to have to kind of craft something on my own, I would probably take Gran Turismo 7, put in a Assetto Corsa Competizione physics and make it work as well with the wheel as that does, give the game a dash cam, give the game a track creator, and give the game an easy matchmaking multiplayer mode. So I'm not someone who likes to wait and sit around 30 minutes for a race to start. I could get into multiplayer much more when I can hop in faster, and I think Gran Turismo could probably implement that, and also many other sims can. And then for cars, just add a lot of the wacky cars back from Gran Turismo 4. I love the Nissan Cube, the Chryslers that I always hate, all the cool Japanese race cars, all the ridiculous, average, everyday cars you would think no one would ever want to drive. Basically, give me ridiculous cars with simulation physics, with a crazy track count, and a track creator, and the Gran Turismo atmosphere and career mode, with some nice sprinkles such as easy multiplayer, a good photo mode, maybe crossplay multiplayer, stuff like that. And that, I think, is probably the closest thing that you could get to my perfect racing game. And I also forgot to say their name. It was Insert Their Name asked this question. Also said, by the way, love your videos, you deserve more than this, thank you very much. JX88 says, do you fart? Well, if I didn't, how concerning would that be exactly? Next, Nut, with a profile picture that I very much approve of, asks, in the campaign modes of racing games, which do you prefer? An anonymous character or a character with personality? My question is rare, but personally when I play, I am motivated and inspired more when I'm playing a game with an anonymous protagonist such as Pro Street or Most Wanted. And honestly, I'd be inclined to agree. And in plenty of games, playing as a character is good. I just don't know if I'm the biggest fan of it in racing games. In racing games, they're usually a game that you kind of apply yourself in, I guess. That's why character creators have been pretty popular, and that's why Need for Speed has one now, but in Need for Speed at least, I prefer someone completely anonymous. Most Wanted 2012 did this with just the completely cover-up outfit and cover-up helmet, so you can't really see any of the person. The thing I'd probably prefer them to do is just take that, and obviously because you wouldn't include men and women in there, let you swap the gender like in Forza Motorsport 7, and then I think you're pretty much golden. They also said, sorry for my bad England. I'm actually a Spanish speaker. I mean, obviously I could tell you're joking here, but if you actually aren't a native English speaker, your English was perfectly fine. And that goes for most of the people that have actually commented and saying they're not native. Most of you guys are perfectly fine with your English. Next question is Digital Camaro. What should be the next location of Forza Horizon 5 and Need for Speed 2021? Forza Horizon 5, I already answered that kind of question earlier. If I had to pick a dream location, it'd be Texas just because I live there. And for general location, I think I would just want something that's a bit more urban than before. Need for Speed 2021, I'm not exactly sure because a lot of people are asking for them just to go outside the US for something different, but it's also hard for me to imagine Need for Speed going outside the US. If I had to pick an ideal location for Need for Speed, I would personally pick something like Chicago from Need for Speed The Run, but fully realized. I would love a more realistic US city, something that I can kind of recognize myself, and something that's not infused with too much art style. I think Miami and Heat was definitely a bit more fantasy at times than realistic. But I'm also someone who's never been to Miami, so I might be completely wrong. A similar question was already asked, but I think this is still a bit different one, so I'll answer it. Eren Yeager asked, do you prefer racing games that have a story, for example, of characters and plot, etc.? I think it kind of depends on the game, but in general, I prefer that a story just doesn't get in the way. I think story can add a bit of atmosphere to the game, add a bit of tone, and I think it's really good for that, but I don't like it when it gets in the way of the game. I think the older Need for Speeds actually did this pretty dang well. Need for Speed Most Wanted 5, for example, you got phone calls and texts and stuff like that, but you could easily X out of them if you wanted to, or you could listen to them if you wanted to know what was going on. It wasn't an unskippable long cutscene. So I think racing game stories that can add tone and atmosphere to the game but aren't in your face are the best kind. But a story wouldn't fit in every game, for example. I mentioned Gran Turismo earlier, and I don't really think Gran Turismo is a game that could benefit from story at all, really. Even if it was something minor to set the tone, I don't think it needs it. So it's really on a game-by-game basis. Retired BMW M3 GTR asks, what car do you think should be in GT7? Well, if it's gonna be one specific car, I would actually have a top two. First one being the old Nissan Cube. I think this would just be a hilarious one to build into something a bit faster and have like a really nicely built track car out of this thing. I just think it'd be hilarious, and I actually think the older model looks pretty cool and much nicer looking than a newer model. The other car that I'd have to pick from Gran Turismo 4 that I'd love to see in GT7 is the Lotus Motorsport Elise from 1999. I have a specific history with this car, actually. I don't know where I got the car from, but it was some kind of Hot Wheels or Matchbox car that I think it was from some kind of McDonald's Happy Meal, and it was a green Lotus that was exactly like this one. I think it was this exact car, and I was scrolling through Gran Turismo 4. I was on a call with my friend Marco Core a few months ago, and I was just scrolling through Lotus and I saw this car and I nearly screamed because this is the first time I've seen this car in any racing game. So I would love to see it reappear in Gran Turismo 7, as it actually made it into Gran Turismo 6 as well, so it made it up to 6. Hopefully we see it again in 7. I kind of doubt it. Next question from Albert Human asks, which brand is underrepresented in racing games and deserves more attention? That's an interesting one. I don't know if there's one specific car brand that I think is necessarily unrepresented in racing games, but what I really like to see that is less representative is just those niche supercars and everyday cars that you don't see all too much anymore. Like I said with Gran Turismo earlier, had tons of everyday cars that I'd like to see appear again, just because they're kind of funny to drive and fun to have in your garage. I don't know what's cool about them in a racing game, but they are for some reason. And then those really, really niche supercars, if we're going to talk more about brands. Stuff like the Rossion Q1, Noble M600, those like early 2010s, late 2000s niche supercars. I think those are cool. Next question from Zenna the Weeba asks, what racing game do you think had the best multiplayer? I would have to say Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, easily. I had the most fun on that. I actually got to level 71 twice. I got all the cars, and this was all back when I was just 12 years old. I played so much of that multiplayer online. And then my second runner-up would definitely have to be The Crew 1. I had a lot of memories with my friends on that game, and we made some really ridiculous online multiplayer videos of it. And I'd have to say it's one of my favorites just because of the variety of events there are. There's good races with all different car classes, and as well as pretty fun party modes. Both of these multiplayer systems are just really smooth, easy to get in and out of, and are really fun. So I'll definitely have to say Most Wanted 2012 and The Crew 1. 2. Have you watched Initial D? I have watched Initial D. I watched the first few episodes of it. I thought it was neat, but it never really hooked me to really get back into it. Mitsubishi or Subaru? Subaru all day, every day, no questions. And your favorite game from the 2010s? Well, I'd actually have to say if it's not a racing game, it's going to be Overwatch. I got into Overwatch massively when the open beta came out, and it is by far probably my favorite game of all time. Yes, my favorite game of all time is not a racing game, despite me running a racing game-oriented YouTube channel. Overwatch, I just love its world, I love its characters, I have so many memories with many friends, and I've made many friends off of Overwatch, and sometimes I'll get, off the game for a while, but whenever I get back into it, I really get back into it. I'm gonna say I probably have about 3,000 hours into the game, and my max rank is actually Diamond on PC. Do you think that racing games will one day return to be a main genre in gaming like the days of the 6th-gen consoles, being GameCube, PS2, and Xbox? So, I don't know if that's even entirely true that they aren't a main genre. You still see them posed as big launch titles. They're still posed at, E3 and all the big gaming events. What you probably mean here is more so about arcade racing games. We've seen less of them in the past 5 years, and I would say there's kind of a more focus on simulation racing games right now, but that's not really the market's fault. That's more of a fault of the people who make arcade racing games. Making good simulation racing games doesn't impact the developers who make arcade racing games. Need for Speed has just been crap for the past 2 titles, and Ghost Games has been pretty mediocre their entire cycle. The Crew 2 has sucked, and even Simcade games that appealed to more arcade-oriented players, like Forza Motorsport and Gran Turismo, were kind of going under a little bit. Forza Motorsport just got worse as the 8th generation went on, and Gran Turismo Sport, while being a high-quality title, got rid of a lot of its appeal to many fans. So it's really a vague question, and I can't fully answer this. Core asks, is gaming epic? I don't even know how you question if this is epic or not, honestly. You got all the essentials right here. I don't know how this, really isn't epic. Honestly, the fact that you even question that really makes me ask some questions about your gamer knowledge. If you weren't asking that question, then why? 2. If you could make an ideal racing games, what elements would you take from different racing games and why? Well, I actually answered this earlier. It's pretty much just GT7 with a set of courses of competency on physics, more ridiculous cars, track creator, easy to get into multiplayer that's fun and replayable, stuff like that. What are the 3 cars in your dream garage with money not being an object? Well, I also kind of answered this earlier with 350Z, E46, and a McLaren F1 LM. But if money was no object, I might replace one of these, like the 350Z, with the Porsche 911 GT3 RS. I don't know which generation, but I really want a 911 in my garage. But if I could have, 4, then you know what I'd be picking here. But if I really had to go for 3, it'd be the previous 3 I already said. 350Z, E46, F1. Next, Darkfighter asks, what is your expectations for Criterion being the one that works in Need for Speed now? And do you think the next Need for Speed should be made in a different engine, like Chameleon, because that's a Criterion engine, or should it be on Frostbite again? My entire expectation on New Year's 2021 is that it's either going to be a Ghost game or a Criterion game. What do I mean by that? So, if this development team is really different, we have new people that know how to do shit better than Ghost did, then we're going to get a more polished title that actually looks like a AAA game, plays smoothly, comes with multiplayer features, is just generally a lot more polished and better than a Ghost title. Or we're going to get another Ghost game with the same issues that we've had for the past 5 years. Not going to launch with multiplayer stuff, going to miss other stuff on launch, going to downgrade the visuals, probably even more, try to fix the physics, which just ends up breaking them more. It's an either-or situation. It's going to be great, it's going to be completely different, or it's just going to be the same bad thing we've gotten for the past 2 titles. And 2, do you think that the next Need for Speed should be made on a different engine? This isn't such a simple question. You can't just copy and paste a game over to a different engine. And as well as that, Chameleon is retired now because it's technically renderware, and they just haven't used that engine in so long. It doesn't have a lot of new technologies. Now, yes, the games that were made on Chameleon were better than the games made on Frostbite probably, but they're not going to go back to it. And I think the whole engine talk is going to be stopped next year. Because if the game is great, if it's a Criterion polished game, we can really see how many issues were down to the engine or were down to the developers. Do you think the direction of Need for Speed will change if Hot Pursuit Remastered sells more than Heat in 2021? Honestly, no, and nor do I expect Hot Pursuit Remastered to sell more just because it's not a new title. Hello famous YouTuber Jake JLF. When will you collab with the YouTube channel Sushilo G? He's an up-and-coming content creator who is very underrated, not gonna lie. Well, honestly, I've heard of Sushilo G before, and to be honest, I have to say his channel is complete crap, complete other shit. Makes terrible videos, at least when you compare him to Sushilo II, his brother, who in my opinion is far superior. Please talk about Need for Speed 2021. Alright, well thanks for letting me know. You'll definitely be seeing more Gran Turismo 7 videos coming on the channel shortly. Daniel Pinkham asks, since you have an interest in a bit of sim racing, do you have any plans to set up a league or a night where we all hop on for some drifting? And second, what's your favorite BMW car? Well, the first one about sim racing and lobbies and leagues. A league? Probably not, but I would definitely be down to an open lobby on something like Assetto Corsa. The only problem with that being that we'd probably just have to do it on Spa because everyone wants to Spa, and the whole DLC issue. So I probably wouldn't let anyone use DLC just to get more people in, but I'll see how that works when I go to actually set that up one day. And I would definitely be more down to doing it once I get my sim rig built, which I'm planning to do next year. Second, what's my favorite BMW car? Easily has to be the car that you see in my profile pic, along with the race version. But if I didn't have to pick that one, because it was probably blatantly obvious, I'd have to either pick the M4 or the F80 M3. Abdullah says, who inspired you to create content on YouTube? So this is an interesting one. I've had many inspirations throughout the years. Probably who inspired me to start creating racing game content on YouTube back in 2015 was probably a combination of Stray Up Hippo, Black Panther, and Craptastic Jack. I watched them all the time, and that got me to change my YouTube profession from one completely different thing to racing game content. Especially as Need for Speed 2015 was coming out, there was so much hype around it, and it just really motivated me to make my own videos like they did. But as of who inspires me now, I actually don't watch a ton of racing game YouTubers. Mainly I watch general gaming YouTubers or tech YouTubers. And in fact, it's actually mainly tech YouTubers. My favorite YouTube channel of all time easily has to be Computer Clan. He's not the biggest one in the world. He has about like 200 to 250k subscribers, and I've watched him since 2014. He's easily my favorite. But some of my other favorite YouTubers as of late have to be Scott the Woz and Modern Vintage Gamer. RF asks, what do you generally wish racing game developers would stop doing in their games? What do you dislike most about most racing games, and how would you change it? I have an easy answer to this one, being the recent trend of lacking multiplayer features. Ever since Need for Speed Payback came out, there's just been some kind of missing multiplayer feature in nearly every arcade racing game to come out after it. Need for Speed Payback started with losing online free roam at launch, and it got so much backlash that for some reason every other racing game that came out afterwards that's an arcade racing game decides to do the exact same thing. I think it just really needs to change. I will always criticize it no matter what they say. Even if you're saying like, oh, well, they were just gonna ask for the fans' feedback to make the thing better. Launch with it and then get the fans' feedback. For this kind of crap, there's never an actual explanation. It's so vague. But as you can tell by my passion that I just ejected, yeah, it's missing multiplayer features, at least at launch. And in the case of Need for Speed Heat, at all. What is your favorite game from 2010 to 2015? Online Echo asks, also love the content, keep it up, thank you very much. That's a hard one because that's a pretty big 5-year gap, but a few of my favorites within that time frame will have to be Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010, Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, Forza Motorsport 4, and Forza Horizon 1. Online Echo also asks, do you think that Need for Speed games went downhill after Ghost Games took over? Yeah, absolutely. Need for Speed Rivals in many ways felt still like a Criterion game, as in it felt cohesive, it felt polished visuals wise. It has really good visuals, it has stable handling, it has a clear direction to the game, but it also feels very Ghost-like in that it was unfinished, it has many bugs, and that the multiplayer is very lackluster. And then when Need for Speed 2015, we actually got a bit more hope with it, but then they threw away everything good that was with it to have Payback and Heat. And my view of Ghost Games is completely different with Payback and Heat than it was back after Need for Speed 2015 came out. But yeah, I think Need for Speed 100% went downhill after Ghost Games took over, and I'm hoping that the new Criterion can really help turn it back around. Log Drive asks, if you could put any cars in the Dirt 5, which one would you pick? Well, I'm gonna say many of the Subarus. I feel like many of the Subarus are missing. My number one by far would be the Subaru WRX hatch, and specifically with the KMC wheels livery. The Rallycross version of that car in Dirt 2 was easily my favorite to play with. 2, what is your opinion on WRC 9? I've heard it's pretty good, but I haven't played it myself. And 3, what is your favorite car that you've driven in a game? I don't really have one specific favorite car from any video game I've ever driven, but I really have a favorite per game. For example, you heard earlier in Dirt 2, I pretty much always used the WRX STI hatchback. In Forza Horizon 3, I used the Ferrari FX6K a lot. In Forza Horizon 4, it was the Koenigsegg CC-GT. In Need for Speed Heat, it was the Lamborghini Countach. I really have a different favorite for every game, and it takes a while for me to develop, just checking out the different cars and then seeing what I like. There's always one or two cars that usually really stick out for me, and those are a few that I have. Jazz asks, how much do you turn your car? I don't know if the question is how much I turn my car, but how well I turn my car, because I clearly do it a lot better than you do. Nikki Palavin asks, what's your favorite gaming platform? I like this one. I've actually had a few favorites over the years, but for a long time, my favorite was definitely Xbox. My first console was the Nintendo GameCube, which I really enjoyed. Afterwards, in 2008, I got an Xbox 360, which broke. And then I got a Nintendo Wii, which I also really enjoyed. And then I surprisingly got another 360 in 2010 with Hot Pursuit 2010. Then 3 years later, I saved up my own money to get an Xbox One on launch day. Later in 2018, I decided I really wanted to try Gran Turismo Sport, so I saved my money for a PS4 and I bought a PS4 Slim. Then this year in 2020, I saw Animal Crossing New Horizons and I really wanted to give it a shot, so I bought a Nintendo Switch. And of course, I've also got my PC, which I built in 2016 by myself. It's really hard to give a favorite. I think there's pros and cons with both console and PC. PC, I love that it's backwards compatible with pretty much anything. There's the power of the modding community, and that of course it can be your computer. It's not just a console, so you can customize pretty much anything on it and do things the way that you want to. But I think the biggest advantage of PC easily has to be the backwards compatibility. You can play pretty much any game from any generation. I know there's some that don't play so nice, but for me, it's been a pretty smooth ride. The problem with me and the PC is that when I'm given power, I use too much of it. AKA, I break every single black box Need for Speed game every 2 seconds, and therefore I can never play them, so I actually just go on my Wii and play them through the GameCube backwards compatibility mode instead of actually playing them on my PC.
Aha, except that's not really true anymore. For GameCube games and stuff like that, I just use this thing now. It's got some modifications to it, and you'll probably be seeing more of it on the channel later. Sorry, Wii.
On PC, I just end up breaking all kinds of crap because I have modding power. And on PC, there can also be issues with the game just not wanting to play nice with your computer. So it's really odd. And on PC, I really don't like that it has to be pretty much on a desk. Of course, yes, you can use your PC on a TV with a wireless keyboard and mouse, but I've never really found it to be that optimal. Obviously, the UI is made for a desk, made for a mouse and keyboard. Yes, there's Steam Big Picture, but it hasn't been updated in ages, and you also can't turn on your PC with a controller. It's just not a plug-and-play experience, and that's what I like about console the most. Then consoles don't really have good backwards compatibility at all. So honestly, there's a lot of pros and cons with different gaming platforms. If I had to pick something that would be perfect, it would probably just be an Xbox Series X that could play all original Xbox and 360 titles and just bump up the res and frame rate. If that was possible, then I'd easily see something like that. But some of my favorites recently have definitely been just my PC for the pure power and how much I could do on it, and Nintendo Switch for how portable and cool the system is. And also the Nintendo exclusives on the system are really great, so I'm gonna have to say PC and Switch currently. Timmie Rea says, I just subbed to your channel and I thought I had my questions. 1. What got you into liking cars? Well, ever since I was a kid, I just seemed to like cars. I remember I first was obsessed with Hot Wheels, and I also did this thing as a kid where I would try to point out every car I saw on the road. So I would try to point out the brand of every car I saw on the road. I would just point at one, oh, that's a Ford, point, oh, that's a Chevy, point, oh, that's a Nissan. I would do that as a kid. So I just kind of thought they were cool ever since I was a kid. And then a bit later in 2005, my dad got me Need for Speed Most Wanted for our PC. It was a potato, but I loved playing it regardless, and I got a GameCube with more Need for Speed games and a Burnout game, and then I got into Forza later on the Xbox and stuff like that. So I think Hot Wheels and games definitely helped my love for cars, but they didn't create it. I just thought they were cool since I was a kid. Favorite racing game from your childhood? So this is a difficult one. I'd probably have to say my favorite as a kid was probably either Need for Speed Underground 1 or Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. I remember playing both of those so much, or maybe Most Wanted, because Most Wanted 2005 was my first ever video game. As a 5-year-old, I actually made it up to Webster in the blacklist. I couldn't get past one of the milestones, but I got pretty far for being so young. And then my favorite from my childhood now might have to be Need for Speed Underground 1. But this question is just kind of like, what is your favorite early 2000s Need for Speed game? It's hard to say my favorite between like Underground 1, Need for Speed Most Wanted, and Need for Speed Carbon. And 3, if you had $80,000, what car would you buy, or would you buy a cheap car and mod it? If I had $8,000, I would probably just go all out and go for something like a used E46 in good condition, and then mod it to something that you see in the picture, probably just with a Laguna Seca blue paint scheme. Abdurrahman Ansari asks, what do you think of the lesser talked about racing games coming out, like the next Test Drive Unlimited or potential for the Crew 3? TDU, I think, isn't talked about very much because they showed pretty much nothing at their event. There's just a little bit of a CGI trailer that doesn't show anything but a few cars, and that there's some character customization. It's definitely got the vibe of TDU, right? So I'm glad they're not, completely changing that over. They're still keeping like the DNA of the series. You can kind of tell that in that trailer. Let's just hope it translates over to the rest of the game. But at the same time, you can't have the exact same thing as TDU 2 with new graphics. They definitely changed it up a little bit and improved things. TDU 2 was a fun game, but flawed in many ways. I found the career to be very boring, and the driving physics obviously could be a lot better. But I love a lot of TDU's concepts, so that's what I'm hoping they kind of improve on, is take TDU and really polish it up a little bit more and twist it up just a little bit. And for the Crew 3, the Crew 3 shouldn't have to exist. Honestly, the Crew 3 was such a failure that like the game pretty much has no hope to me. That's why I don't even talk about it. I never play the Crew 2. I never play it. The game is optimized so badly on PC, and the game just feels so bland and worse than the Crew 1 in most ways. Worse PvP, worse graphics. In a lot of ways, I think worse presentation, worse soundtrack, as well as the annoying summit events that you have to, buy the car for, that you can't just rent it. So you can't even do like a quarter of the summit events. The Crew 2 is a game that immediately disappointed me on its reveal, because it was just using the same map as the Crew 1. I expected a different map, like somewhere in Europe. But now that the Crew 2 has been using the same map, can they just recycle it and make more games of the Crew franchise? In my opinion, the Crew 2 isn't really a true sequel. It should have been called the Crew Motor Nation or something, and I think I would have been happier with it, but it still wouldn't have been that great of a game. If they were wanting to do all this stuff with the Crew 2 and have it in the same map, I feel like they should have just built on the Crew 1 more. The Crew 1 was a better game in pretty much nearly every way to me. I feel like they're wasting a lot of manpower on the Crew 2. They're adding like cool cars. They're actually, putting some work into it, but just not in the right areas. And they're putting it on a game that's not very good at its base. So I guess a Crew 3 could clean that up. But just the fact that it would be called the Crew 3 would just remind me of how much of a failure the Crew 2 is. Nicholas Garcia Hedinger asks, what are your thoughts about Big Rigs over-the-road racing being remastered potentially? Honestly, I would love for a remaster of Big Rigs, especially for new players. Okay, I can't keep that up. NFS Beast asks, and by the way, I have to say, you've been subscribed for like the longest time. You've been commenting on my videos since like 2013. So shout out to NFS Beast for being a really awesome longtime supporter of my channel. Thank you so much. 1, if you could own any iconic Need for Speed car, which one would it be and why? I know this is going to be the generic answer, but I would obviously take the M3 GTR. It was my favorite as a kid. The E46 is my favorite car of all time. And the M3 GTR, the race car, is extremely rare. No one else is going to be able to own that. So you'd also have a rare car in your hands if you could own that in real life. If I had to pick something else though, it would probably either be Rachel's 350Z, and I would probably do like a different paint job over it if I could, or Nakai-san's RW Porsche from Need for Speed 2015, if you could consider that an iconic Need for Speed car. What is your favorite location in all the cities featured Need for Speed games? By far, it has to be Fairhaven. Fairhaven feels like a true inner city Need for Speed map. It doesn't feel like something that tried to have a bit of a city and just ends up feeling like kind of a shoo-in or an afterthought. It feels like a true city map built with, areas of like highway and country and rural around it. It also has just a ton of fun and memorable areas in general, and I played so much online in Most Wanted 2012. I just remember the map by the back of my hand. I have to pick Fairhaven, by far. And 3, what would a good lesson be for Criterion to learn when developing Need for Speed 2021? Well, I made a whole entire video about this, but just not listening to online feedback. Obviously, fan feedback is important, but with Need for Speed, you have so many different types of games that span so many different types of, racing genres, that you have so many different types of fans asking for something different. and Ghost games tried to please everyone, which resulted in mediocre overall games. If you try to please one group or one specific type of thing, then I think you're much better off, and your game will end up much more focused and polished. And I think there's also a benefit to not listening to the community, because if they're not really listening to a ton of people, I feel like they have more potential in their minds to kind of create something unique of their own. And Ghost games didn't really have that. I feel like the only true unique thing Ghost did in their titles was the whole icon system in Need for Speed 2015 with all the real drivers and stuff. It is still so cool to this day, in my opinion, and I wish they would do something like that again, but I feel like Need for Speed 2015 in general is kind of like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for them. What's your take on every Need for Speed developer, Black Box, Criterion, Ghost, ones from the classic era, etc.? With the classic era, I haven't really played all that much. The only one from the classic era that I have played is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2, the non-PS2 version, so it wasn't developed by Black Box. Black Box, obviously, were really, really great. They managed to make all the iconic Need for Speed games under, a ton of pressure from EA and having to push out a new game every single year. And as well as that, introducing new things in Need for Speed franchise. They introduced car customization with Need for Speed Underground, and then they brought back the kind of Hot Pursuit style with Most Wanted, and kind of back to Underground with Carbon, and experimented more with Pro Street and Undercover. But they mostly made very, very good titles. The golden, 4 or 5. Criterion only made 2 Need for Speed titles, and in my opinion, they were cut short. 2 of them are some of my favorite Need for Speed games. I know not everyone shares that same opinion, because people like car customization, but Criterion have just some of the best, in my opinion. They have the best online. Some of the nicest looking games too. Both have fantastic soundtracks, and are overall very fun games, and I just feel like they're overlooked because they don't have car customization. And Most Wanted 2012 is overlooked because it has a dumb name. But overall, I love Criterion's Need for Speed games, and I feel like they were cut short. I wish they were developing it for longer. And then Ghost games. I had a lot of faith in them initially with Rivals in 2015, but when Payback came out, it really just fell through the roof. And with Heat, it just hit rock bottom. Obviously, Heat is a much better game than Payback, but it still had so many issues that Payback had to me. I can't really call Heat a great game. It's a fun game, but it's not a great game. And the fact that the Ghost games has so many same issues over and over again that they just didn't fix. People like to talk about Need for Speed Heat and how they were progressing to make something good, but you shouldn't have a AAA developer like making 3 to 4 games to make something decent. Need for Speed Heat is not a good game at its base, and I'm definitely going to emphasize that in a future video. I've had an idea for that for a long time. But Heat's not good at its base, and Ghost games could never make a full game in my opinion. The best thing they had in my opinion was Need for Speed 2015. Yes, crappy driving, underpowered cops, but good everything else. The game, even with its bad handling, actually felt like a full package. The game felt cohesive. There wasn't a story that felt half finished. I think the live action cutscenes are way better than the in-game animated ones. The overall soundtrack and atmosphere is better. Even the marketing was way better. Overall, Need for Speed 2015, in my opinion, was their only somewhat complete product. Ghost, I'm glad they got shelved. Of course, it's sad for people that lost their jobs, but I think it's something that needs to happen for the series. Otherwise, we would have been stuck with a crappy developer for a long time, I think. Airport Jumper asks, do you think that the soundtrack is an important aspect in racing games? If you do, then what about fitting it to the theme and pace of the game? I find for many racing games, I think it is important, even though it seems like a lot of people like to turn them off. I mean, that's understandable, but I remember a lot of racing games by their soundtrack. Forza Horizon 1 would be nowhere near the same game without its music, in my opinion. I think there are some games where obviously it matters less, say in, sim racing games. Obviously that's not gonna matter. I kind of wish they had them in the menus and stuff like that. I think soundtracks can be important just to add a little bit of atmosphere to something so it doesn't feel flat, So yeah, I do think soundtracks, for the most part, are an important aspect in racing games. However, they do matter some more than others. Boa says, what's your favorite game, racing or not, that critics or the public didn't seem to hold to the same level of praise as you? So for this one, it's actually gonna have to be a racing game because, some of my favorite non-racing games were actually very well regarded by the public. But this one in particular for me is GT Sport. GT Sport is extremely underrated in my opinion. I think it blows Drive Club out of the water. I know people will kill me for saying that because I know Drive Club is the popular choice for PS4 exclusive racing games. I bought a PS4 just for GT Sport and I don't regret it at all. And in fact, it's leading me to where, I'm gonna buy a PS5 for GT7. But I definitely want to make a video in the future talking about GT Sport and why I think it's super underrated, because the title just gets so much crap and I feel like people don't even give it a proper try. So I'd absolutely have to say GT Sport. GT Sport gets so much crap and I love the game. Even as someone completely new to the Gran Turismo franchise that doesn't play the game online all that much. Carbon Fiber Goat asks, do you think that GTA is just Midnight Club in disguise, and what are your opinions on the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remaster? I'll answer the Hot Pursuit Remaster one real quick. You can check out my video on why Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remaster exists. I put a little sprinkle of opinion there at the end, and how is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remaster on the Nintendo Switch. I go in more depth in there, but I'm glad it exists, mainly for crossplay reasons and being able to play it on the go on the Nintendo Switch version. I think it was a little expensive at launch, but overall I'm glad it exists, mainly just for the multiplayer. But for GTA being a Midnight Club in disguise, I think some of the stuff that would have went to Midnight Club, some of the work, like making car bumpers and customization, stuff like that, has been, moved over to GTA. But GTA is not a Midnight Club replacement. While you can say they are similar in that they're open world games where you can drive cars, the focus on driving cars and the general driving physics feel is very, very, very different. GTA is a game that you can race in, but it's not a racing game. So no, I don't think it's a Midnight Club in disguise, but some of the workers that would have done things for Midnight Club are probably working on GTA. What is your favorite Java racing game? I haven't played any Java racing games as of late, so I can't really say anything. The only Java racing game I have played is one that I played on my grandpa's flip phone way back in the day when I was a kid, but obviously I don't remember anything from that, so I can't say what it was. What are your opinions on the newer Need for Speed games, from Rivals to Heat? Talked about this plenty before, but I'll sum it up real quick. Rivals, okay game, too buggy. Need for Speed 2015, almost perfect, yet so far in some ways. Payback, I don't want to speak of it again, and Heat, fun, but too many problems to be considered great. What is your all-time favorite car from any video game? I'll just kind of answer that with what, was probably my favorite car. That is the car that, is in the outline of my profile picture. You could probably figure it out right there. How the hell can 3K sub-channel give 1 million tier videos? What's the secret? I got no idea what the secret is. I just make videos and people perceive them as 1 million tier sub videos. Stormer248 asks, what racing game do you believe to have the best open world map? Well, I kind of answered that earlier with Need for Speed being Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, but if I was gonna have to say to, count in other racing games, I think Paradise City and Big Surf Island is really good. I think Forza Horizon 1's Colorado is really, really good too. But Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 might have my favorite. Probably tied with Colorado and Forza Horizon 1. If I really had to pick a favorite, I would probably tie those two. And continuing this theme, what are your 5 favorite fictional circuits, routes, stages, etc. in racing games? I actually have that planned for an upcoming video in the future, so stay tuned for that. Turbo Boosted asks, what do you think about the community behind Need for Speed who are making tons of mods to keep the games alive? I think the biggest example of this is probably Need for Speed World, and I find it to be very, very impressive, especially how they, can give the feel of the original, like in the trailers and their updates and stuff like that, like acting as if, EA never shut it down. I think it's a very impressive recreation of what Need for Speed World was back in the day. Second question, what do you think about the Crew 1 and the Crew 2? Were they good games in the racing game genre? I enjoyed the Crew 1. I think it had not very good handling and physics, but I still played a lot of it, and I think it was a very good game. To me, at least. It probably wasn't a very good game in an objective form, I guess, but what does that really matter? And the Crew 2, you can just throw that in the garbage. Saksham Sharma asks, what's the story behind your channel profile picture? Well, my channel profile picture is a BMW M3 E46, if you couldn't figure that out already. It was actually drawn by a YouTuber by the name of Next, or you might know him as Next Gaming. He's someone who's not active anymore and he hasn't been for years, but he made a few very, very cool logos for a few people in the community. He actually made multiple for me when I was just starting to take my channel a bit more seriously. He actually did an outline of a BRZ for me, and he did this outline for the E46 for me in 2016, like early 2016, and I've kept this logo since then. Radu Vasc asks, what are your opinions on F1 and motorsport in general? I can't really give too much of an opinion as I don't watch motorsport. I don't watch much things on TV at all. I know you can watch it online, but I just haven't bothered to, give it a shot. I would like to try watching it sometime, as every now and then I will watch some motorsport clips on YouTube and I get really immersed in them and I keep watching more and more and more, but I've never really gone to watch full races before. Question, why isn't track-oriented arcade racers more common? It's always the same formula recently where track equals sim, and sims are usually full of serious guys. More laid-back track racers are appreciated. I agree with that actually. I really enjoy arcade track racing games like Grid 1 and Grid 2. And lately, yeah, they do kind of get shunned because it's not a sim. And people are very used to, track racing games being simulators right now. Sim racing is hot, especially in quarantine when, all the drivers had to go on sims to actually go do racing. So I think sim racing as a hobby has really exploded. So that kind of increases the expectation for more and better racing simulations. And so when there's a new game that isn't one, people are like, huh? But simulation doesn't have to be on a track, and being on a track doesn't have to make it a simulation. There are reasons to why, all the racing sims are on tracks. Open world would be kind of complex, and I'm going to talk about that in a future video. But yeah, I do appreciate arcade track racers. I love Grid 1 and Grid 2, and it would be cool if they were more common. Lietson Goncalves says, what's your opinion of Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012? In general, I think it's a great game. I think they just chose the wrong name for it. I think it would have gotten so much less crap if they chose a different name. That's pretty much all it needed in my opinion. The crash cams are kind of annoying. That's really the game's only true problem to me. But I enjoyed the open world ton, the soundtrack, the multiplayer, even the single player, and just trying to get all the cars and parts and stuff like that I enjoy a lot. And I think the game just gets too much hate when it's a really good game just with the wrong name. Ross Boss says, do you think that Need for Speed Shift is as bad as people make it out to be? I don't think people make Need for Speed Shift out really that badly. I did enjoy Shift 1. I do think it's a pretty good game. Shift 2, I just can't get into. I think the handling is just worse than Shift 1. The controls feel worse. The input lag's really bad. It has some cool music in the menu, but I like the menu ambience in Shift 1 more, where it's kind of like mid-race and dramatic and all that stuff. I think that was pretty cool in Shift 1. I like the overall theme and aesthetic of Shift 1 more than Shift 2, even though they're pretty similar. But I don't think Shift 1 is a bad game. I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's a pretty good one. Shift 2, on the other hand, I just can't get into. But I don't really see people making Shift 1 out to be that bad. Nicholas Enrique Garcia Castillo says, do you want a Most Wanted 05 remastered or remake? Honestly, no. I think what would be best for the old Need for Speed games is for them to get a Hot Pursuit remaster type of re-release. Just re-release them all on the new consoles, give them cross-platform multiplayer, restore the online functionality, just upscale things to high resolution, and use the best graphical version possible, say like a Most 105's 360 version. But as like a technical port, I don't think that would take too much work. But a remake is an entirely different deal. And if I was going to choose a Need for Speed to remake, I would do Underground 1 personally. But I don't really want to see any remakes from Need for Speed, seeing the state of the franchise currently. Now, if Need for Speed got as much care and funding and love as, pretty much any other big gaming franchise in the world, where you could get remasters and remakes and car licensing wasn't a pain in the ass, I think a remake or two could be cool. But the current state of Need for Speed, with the sad developer known as Ghost, and the games just coming out every 2 years and all that stuff, I don't think Need for Speed's really in a good place to be releasing more than just the mainline games, really. I think the best bet is just a standard definitive edition type port like Hot Pursuit got. Altechno Craft asks, 1. What's your favorite race car? One that I definitely have a soft spot for is the Nissan Primera British touring car. It turns something that you'd think would be just a basic sedan into a really, really cool looking race car. I've driven it on Assetto Corsa so many times, and it's definitely given me a soft spot for it. And 2, do you think Criterion will do well on Need for Speed 2021? Honestly, I can't give you a straight answer on that. I have no idea. There's 2 outcomes in my opinion. Either it's just going to feel and look the same as a Ghost Need for Speed title, or it's going to be something completely different. It's kind of either or extreme in my opinion. Andy Zavala says, is it the right time for Midnight Club 5 to come back? Should one company own Rockstar's past game and develop on a new Midnight Club game? Well, that isn't as simple as you might say it is. So I know you're saying if a company were to buy the rights to Midnight Club, but Rockstar's not gonna do that. They're not just gonna sell a right to their IP. People are asking for more arcade racers since there's been more of a drought of them. So it probably would be good, especially a studio that has a giant spotlight on them, Rockstar. So I think it could be a good time, considering a lot of the AAA racing games haven't been so hot, like Need for Speed and The Crew. And a lot of racing sims have been coming out, so I think probably something arcadey from a big company could balance that out. Pheonix Defender says, why do you think Codemasters failed to repeat successes of its previous game like Race Driver Grid and Dirt 2? Well, the thing is about that is that that's going to obviously be very opinionated. Dirt 5 has gotten great critical reception and great reception from many fans. I'm in a minority where I don't like Dirt 5. I have no motivation to play it, and I don't exactly know why. I don't know why their recent games just haven't been as good. Dirt Rally 2.0 was really good, but that's a sim. These are the more arcadey titles, and those are the ones they haven't been doing so hot on. I just don't know why they haven't been able to make a good arcade racing title in a few years. But that's something that not everyone is going to agree with. A lot of people think Dirt 5 is great, so it's going to depend on who you ask. He also added, why not try to just remaster the old games instead of trying to create something new at the expense of content? I actually saw a Codemasters developer talk about this in Dirt 5 Discord, about how to bring back the licensing costs and all the stuff that would cost to remaster those games, it would cost actually a similar amount to just making a new game, and they would rather do that, which makes perfect sense in my opinion. Gosho Tosho says, watch Need for Speed Hot Pursuit video, and then 10 more. Anyway, what about a Formula 1 franchise review? Would it be a thing? As I said earlier, I haven't watched too much Formula 1, and I haven't played too many Formula 1 games, so I wouldn't be able to do that, unfortunately. And should I get the Thrustmaster T80 since there isn't a wheel as cheap as this one? I don't know if I would really recommend the T80. In my opinion, the minimum wheel I would recommend is the Thrustmaster T150. It actually has belt-driven force feedback, and I've actually heard it's better than the Logitech G920s. But if you're gonna buy a wheel, in my opinion, get something just decent. Don't completely cheap out. And while the Thrustmaster 80 isn't completely cheaping out, I mean, you could get a Hori wheel. If you really want to give it a shot, just try a T150 and then go from there, in my opinion. 2020 Polestar 1 asks, what made you create a YouTube channel? Well, this isn't actually my first YouTube channel, but when I started going on YouTube, eventually I did start watching some gaming videos, and I started watching Need for Speed and videos on other racing games and stuff like that, and that inspired me to do some stuff of my own. While my early videos weren't really the greatest, I'm not ashamed of either. I was just a kid. I can't really give myself too much crap. And over time, with seeing different, creators in this space, made this my main channel for quite a while now. Polestar also asks, what was your childhood dream car and present day dream car? As a kid, I just loved the BMW M3 GTR from Need for Speed and the Nissan 350Z. Present day dream car are the ones that I talked about earlier in the video. Polestar also says, do you have any predictions for the future in Need for Speed franchise? No, I don't really. It's all up in the air to me. Z96 asks, what are your thoughts on the way soundtracks and racing games have changed over the years and what it is today? Well, that's a bit of a broad question. I could answer that about a specific franchise. Need for Speed, I think, has been kind of poor in the past few years, with Ghost Games trying to, only force themselves to pick from the year the game is coming out and the previous year in terms of its soundtrack. If you look at Rivals, only songs from 2012 and 2013 were in there. If you look at Years for 2015, only songs from 2014 and 2015 are in there. If you look at Payback, 2016, 2017, etc. Criterion allowed them to take songs from like the 1970s, 80s, whatever decade they wanted. And they made an excellent soundtrack out of it. And I'm not saying, oh my god, use old music, all the new music sucks. I'm not like that. What I'm saying is that if you're making a game in 2021, don't limit yourself to songs from 2021 and 2020. You can use a song from 2018 that fits. You can use a song from 2012 that fits. You can use a song from 1963 that fits. Who knows? So that's Need for Speed. What about Forza Horizon? Well, Forza Horizon, I'd say, has had very, very strong soundtracks. Both 1, 2, and 3 are very strong, 1 and 3 being my favorites. However, I find Forza Horizon 4 soundtrack to be extremely poor. Okay, maybe not extremely, but poor compared to the first 3 games. Hospital Records is far too ambient. There's not enough festival-sounding tracks. Also, barely any vocals. I know drum and bass doesn't need vocals, but it did add nicely to a lot of tracks in Horizon 2 and 3. Block Party is still pretty good, but there's a few songs on there that I would skip. Meanwhile, in Horizon 3, I didn't want to skip anything on Block Party. But Horizon Pulse was absolutely murdered. You go from the amazing, modern, super nice sounds of Forza Horizon 3's to over and over again. I'm sorry to anyone who likes that song in the game. I didn't mean to offend you. That's just my opinion. The only thing I'll give it is that it did introduce me to my favorite solo artist, being Anderson .Paak, but one song doesn't make up for the rest. And the second question from Zen96 was that which racing game soundtrack has connected with you the most? I would definitely have to say Forza Horizon 1 on that part. StarCrash1750 asks, do you like rally games? And what do you feel about it? Have you ever watched WRC? Do I like rally games? Absolutely. I have enjoyed Dirt Rally 1 and 2, however, I don't play them too much. But when I do, they are certainly a treat. I have played more of the arcadey Dirt games, however, like Dirt 2 and Dirt 3. Those are excellent games in my opinion. I haven't played too many off-road and rally games other than the Dirt series though. And about WRC, no, I haven't ever watched WRC. I've watched a little bit of like clips of rally cross at the X Games and stuff like that because I saw it over and over in the Dirt games. I'm like, what was this actually like back then? I went to watch a few clips of that, but I've never watched like full WRC races and competitions, stuff like that. Genesis Dumayag says, what racing franchise do you love the most and why? This is a bit of a difficult one. Either it's just Need for Speed or Forza. I know, generic response. Need for Speed is mainly what I grew up as a kid, but I've had a soft spot with Forza for quite a long time. That's why I was so passionate about Forza 7 being bad. But that's not a question that I can really answer. That's a bit difficult for me. Squalt's DZN, what was your first car and what are you driving right now? Ninja Gamer asks, hi, I'm from Saudi Arabia and I'd like to ask you about Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. Do you think we'll see Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 in the future? So I'm guessing what you mean by this is kind of, will we see a remaster of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 or some kind of port? I think it's extremely unlikely, especially considering that we got Hot Pursuit 2010 remastered. I think that would just confuse people even more than Hot Pursuit 2010 remastered already did. But no, I don't think we'll ever see any kind of port or remaster for Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. Wonton asks, what do you think of the new Supra and the new Z? I actually like the new Supra. I know everyone says, oh, it's a BMW, but does that really matter? Really? From people who will never buy this car saying, oh my god, why isn't it Toyota made? How does that affect the car and how good the car is? Seriously, what does it matter being completely made from one company about? I guess it's the whole heritage factor that people love the original, not the original, the Mark IV, what I'm talking about, the original Mark IV Supra so much. I guess it's that because that was completely made by Toyota and people just want the same thing again. Let's just throw it up in the air. Like Mazda and Subaru team up to make a new sports car. People wouldn't be crying about it. People are crying about it just because it's a Supra. And obviously I haven't driven one, but I'd like to. They look like fun, nice cars. And styling wise, I think it looks great. I like that it didn't turn into a supercar like the FT1 concept. I didn't like the aspect, like the thought of these manufacturers turning their, old 40, 50K Japanese sports cars all into supercars. I like the path that they took with the new Supra. It would be nice if it had a manual. I think that's probably the only thing that's missing. And as for the new Z, I think it's so close to being perfect. Talking just styling wise here, it's just, there's a few little imperfections on it that just look a little bit off that I hope they fix. The car is so good looking though. It is so close to being a modern classic in my opinion. It's so close. And I really hope they fix a few of the little blemishes they have. Faye1699 says, hey, I'm a new subscriber here. Thanks for getting 3K subs. Well, wow, that's outdated. Thank you very much. They asked, how about the older Need for Speed games to the newest Need for Speed games? What's your thought about it? Well, I think the Ghost games just haven't been that great. So yeah, the older ones are better. And the Criterion games are a lot better than the Ghost games too. The Aventador 44, shout out to the Aventador 44, by the way, for being an excellent memer in the Hot Pursuit stream. Which game really got you into racing games? Well, my first one was the was one in 2005, so it was probably that. However, I think my next one was probably Forza Motorsport 4. I think those two changed my likes for racing games the most. Honestly, thinking about it, even Assetto Corsa and Project Cars 2 changed my likes a lot too. They really got me into Sims. Sam Animations asks, have you ever played games like Gas Guzzler, Trackmania, or Distance? I haven't played Gas Guzzlers or Distance. I've seen a little bit of Distance, which looks neat, but I have played Trackmania, and I love Trackmania. I played a lot of United and Nations Forever on PC. It was a really easy to run game, so before I got my good PC, I could still play it. I just love making the dumb custom tracks, even with the kind of limited like stadium space. In Trackmania Turbo, I played with my cousins a lot. We did the hot seat mode, where you just try to get the best times past the controller. So much fun. El Garj asks, have you tried hardcore sim racing titles like iRacing or R Factor 2, Assetto Corsa Competizione, or even Automobilista, which is kind of like a beefed up Project Cars 2?
This is Post-Editing Jacob, here with an announcement. These two games are not the same thing.
Automobilista and Automodelista are completely different despite having two stupidly similar names. They couldn't be further apart. I just need to say that real quick. You can get back to the video now. I want to try Automobilista. I haven't yet. I just haven't got around to buying it. There's a lot of things I'm saving for right now, so I put some of those games at kind of a lower priority, but I really want to take a look at Automobilista at some point. So of course, the Competizione I have tried. At first, I really crapped on it because there was no content, but then I kind of understood later what the game was trying to do. I really wanted to get into the multiplayer in it, but every single time I boot the game, my force feedback dies. But when it does work, it's probably the best force feedback I've tried in any racing sim. However, I haven't tried iRacing or R Factor 2. By far, my favorite sim racing titles have to be Assetto Corsa, the original, and Project Cars 2. Assetto Corsa for its modding ability, and Project Cars 2 for its really nice, polished feel and nice graphics and being able to change the seasons and stuff like that. Mazda Demio XC Touring 2015 asks, what racing games do you think are masterpieces? I think the ones that probably go in like a masterpiece category for me are probably Forza Horizon 1, Forza Motorsport 4, Need for Speed Top Pursuit 2010. I'd probably put Need for Speed Underground 1, but the word masterpiece, I don't know if the word masterpiece goes with it, just because it seems like a bit of a dramatic word, if that makes any sense. And I think Gran Turismo 7 will be in that list as well. Brenno Filipe asks, do you think a street racing game with realistic physics would be good?
Apple support. Calls are recorded for evaluation and training. Apple is happy to offer a choice of music while you wait.
Yeah, can I get, We Did It Again by Swiss Beats featuring Metallica and Ja Rule? Yes, Mr. Metallica, yes.
What can I help with today?
I think someone is hacked into my computer or something is up with the security of it, because there is someone that apparently is spying on my Final Cut Pro timeline.
Fred Racer asks, question, do you have a main car that you use in every game? And if not, how do you choose what car to use when playing a new game for the first time? I don't really have a main car that I use in every game, and honestly, it's kind of easier to pick a car when there's not as many cars in a racing game, so you can kind of narrow your choices down easier. But really, I kind of just go with whatever interests me. Like when I started my Dirt 2 playthrough, I liked the Subarus the best, so I picked the Subaru WRX hatch, and that's what I stuck with for most of the game. Just a Waffle asks, how is your day-to-day? What do you plan on doing in your life? And can you tell your mom I said hi?
Hey, Just a Waffle says to say hi.
Nuss Wahl says, are old racing games better than new ones? That's such a broad question. I can't give you a straight answer. Older Need for Speed games, better than newer ones. I mean, honestly, that goes for Forza as well. The older Forzas, like the 360 Forzas, I think are better than the Xbox One Forzas, even though I still love Forza Horizon 3. It's such a broad question. You can't really answer that. Gaming with Steve says, hey Jake, are VR racing games the future of racing sim and arcade racing games? Honestly, I'd love for VR to become more of a feature, more utilized in racing games, as I think it could very much be the future of racing games. I think it needs to happen more, and I think it needs to happen also in an open world racing game. I think Forza Horizon would be probably a great contender for it, but Microsoft isn't interested in VR, so that's probably not happening for a while, or ever. Do you watch Formula 1? As I said earlier, no, I don't, but I do occasionally watch some motorsport clips on YouTube. I've never watched a full race, though. Will there be any coverage about Gran Turismo? Well, there actually has been coverage about Gran Turismo on my channel before, and there definitely will be in the future. I've got a very good video about Gran Turismo 7 planned for the future. And you think the future of Need for Speed is just remasters and popular named titles? I don't know what you mean by popular named titles, but the future Need for Speed being just remasters? Absolutely not. I think they're just going to do a Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012 remaster in 2022. Stellar Entertainment will do it. And that's probably going to be it, because Stellar seems to just be remastering their Criterion Need for Speed games on their 10th year anniversary, and that's the only one left. Gaming with Steve also said, and lastly, how the hell do you just have 3K subs? You deserve way better. And I'm still pissed about that Roblox vid outro. Are you talking about the Roblox video from 2016? F70R1N asks, what do you think of the Fast and Furious films? The only one I've fully seen is Too Fast, Too Furious, which I did enjoy. I do like that movie, but I haven't seen the other ones in full. Spees asks, what do you think about Test Drive Unlimited games? So, TDU1, I did play a bit of when I was a kid. I remember that game being pretty good. TDU2, I've played more of, however. I did enjoy the custom, like, route creator in TDU2. I played a lot of that. I like the whole, car dealership, house ownership. I love all the concepts of that, but as I said earlier, TDU, like, in terms of driving physics and its mechanics and stuff like that, I think could be improved a lot. So hopefully they do in Solar Craft. And finally, the last question comes from a good guy, Tarek, asking a question that I get from people, that I get teased about, that I feel like I can finally completely answer. What made you switch your YouTube name from Jake JLF to Jake MG? So this is going to be a bit of a story right here. I've had a long history of YouTube names. I first started out on YouTube doing Lego stop motions and what they call brick films. I did a lot of that stuff, and then I wanted to do gaming videos on the side, so I made JLF Gaming. So the Lego channel was called Jake Lego Films, and then the gaming channel was called JLF Gaming. So obviously you have your main channel and then you have your gaming channel. The name just makes sense. I stopped doing the Lego videos around late 2015 and then started doing more racing game videos. However, my name was still JLF Gaming, so it didn't make all that much sense. I wanted to get the gaming out of my name. People knew me by the JLF initials, even though it didn't make sense for the channel. And what I did for my social media back then was do Jake JLF, and that was sort of Jake from JLF Gaming. That's what the Twitter handle meant. And then later in like late 2016, I think it was August or September, I did this. I changed my YouTube name to Jake JLF because I wanted my name in the YouTube channel name. I didn't want to get the gaming out of it. It's the only thing I could think of is just to use whatever I had on my Twitter handle. And it didn't make sense. It makes sense for a Twitter handle, Jake from JLF Gaming, the channel. But then on the YouTube channel, what does Jake JLF mean? Jake Lego Films? The Lego Films isn't even a thing anymore. And I had it like this for a few years, just until recently, right before I blew up. I changed it to Jake MG for my initials instead. This was an extremely smart move, I think, as I like the channel name more. It represents, what I like to do more. I don't like to limit myself to gaming content or racing game content or whatever. The channel name allows me to, do what I want, even though I primarily do racing game content. I'll do something different every now and then, like maybe like a tech review or something like that. So it's just my name and actually just my initials, because the old name just, due to evolving, YouTube channels and stuff like that, it just didn't make sense anymore. So that's the story of my YouTube name. Whew. So I have nearly 2 hours of answers to edit. I'm recording this at the end of finishing up all these Q&A questions, and it being January 2021. I know it's been a few months since I actually started this Q&A, but due to a variety of circumstances that I talked about on my YouTube community post, I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry for it taking this long. But I wanted to get into it, and I also wanted to make it interesting, and I think some people will probably watch it all the way through. Some people will watch some certain segments. But I hope I made things interesting enough to watch plenty of the answers and stuff like that, because people like my discussion about things, and I wanted to actually do some discussion in this video because people ask me discussion-related topics. I'm not going to give them a yes or no answer, So I want to do the best I could on that, even if the video ends up being quite long. And well, I think I might try to find a better way to manage my next Q&A. I hope you guys did enjoy this one, though. Let me know what you thought of it all. Sorry for it taking a while, and I'll see you guys later.
We'll be right back.